أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت وأبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت عليك توكلت وأنت رب العرش العظيم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة أنا آخذ بناصيتها إنك بعلى صراط مستقيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث ومن عذابك أستجير أصلح لي شريك له ولا تكلني إلى نفسي ولا إلى أحد من خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والهزل وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. اللهم إني أسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا يا والي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتي وامن رواتي. اللهم احفظني من بين يدي ومن خلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي ومن فوقي واعوذ بعظامك ان اغتال من تحتي. اللهم انت خلقتني وانت تهديني وانت تطعمني وانت تسقيني وانت تميتني وانت تهيني وانت على كل شيء قدير. اصبحنا على فطرة الاسلام وعلى كلمة الاخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى ملة ابينا ابراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم بك اصبحنا وبك امسينا وبك نحيا وبك نموت وعليك نتوكل وعليك النصور. أصبحنا واصبح الملك لله والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إنا نسألك هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبكره وهدى. اللهم إنا نسألك خير هذا اليوم وخير ما فيه وخير ما قبله وخير ما بعده. وأعوذ بك من شر هذا اليوم وشر ما فيه وشر ما قبله وشر ما بعده. اللهم ما أسمع به من نعمة أو بهذه من خلقك فمنك ولك لا شريك لك ولك الحمد ولك الشكر على ذلك. سبحان الله بحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله بحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه سبحان الله بحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله عدد مخلوق السماء سبحان الله عدد مخلوق الأرض سبحان الله عدد ما بين ذلك سبحان الله عدد ما خالق. الحمد لله عدد مخلوق السماء الحمد لله عدد مخلوق الحمد لله عدد ما بين ذلك الحمد لله عدد ما خالق. لا إله إلا الله عدد مخلوق السماء لا إله إلا الله عدد مخلوق الأرض لا إله إلا الله عدد ما بين ذلك لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خالق. الله أكبر عدد مخلوق السماء الله أكبر عدد ما خلق الأرض الله أكبر عدد ما بين ذلك الله أكبر عدد ما هو خلق. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد مخلوق السماء لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد مخلوق الأرض لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما بين ذلك لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله ولا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد هو يمين على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذا خلق مرة. لا إله إلا الله ولا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد هو يمين على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذا خلق مرة. لا إله إلا الله ولا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد هو يمين على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذا مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في الله صلاة وسلاما دائما من الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذا ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في الله صلاة وسلاما دائمين من ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذا مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في الله صلاة وسلاما دائمين من ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذا مرة في كل الله الذين مدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى ناصر الحق الحق والهادي بالصراط المستقيم وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. نويت والتعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والفائدة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى دلائل الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته القرب والثواب سبحانه وتعالى. So alhamdulillah, yesterday we talked about what is considered to be compulsory knowledge. And before we go into the next section, I just wanted to put to you a couple of questions. The word that's used when we talk about knowledge by Imam al-Ghazali is ilm al-mahmud and ilm al-madmum. This is two of the categories. What's the root letters of the word mahmud? No, mim is not a root letter. This is additional letters, the root letters. Ha, mim, dal. Hamida, which means
the one that's been praised.
To praise or to be to give shukr. So this Mahmud, when we say good knowledge, we actually call it knowledge which is Mahmud. Praiseworthy is probably the best translation of the word Mahmud. But think the word Mahmud is related towards Hamd. So it's an act of gratitude. The word Madhmum is the opposite, which means blameworthy, or that which is low. So these are two categories. And then the other two categories, and they cross over because you can be in two different categories, is that which is fard, that we use the ahkam. So we have fard and we use not fard for this, meaning kifaya. We have fard, which is not fard, that which you have to do, and that which you don't have to do. And that which you have to do falls into two categories, that which is fardu ayn and that which is fardu kifaya. And what's the difference between fardu kifaya and fardu ayn?
Fardu ayn is compulsory for
on everybody, on an individual. The word ayn actually means individual. So this is a compulsion on every individual. But as I was explaining yesterday, the understanding that we have from what Ghazali is saying is the ayn, fardu ayn, become ayn on an individual because of the situation he's in. And the fardu ayn, as we described yesterday, changes with time. So if a person becomes Muslim, as we said, at the time of duha, then he doesn't need to know how to pray until the Dhuhr time. But at that time, at duha, he needs to know what the meaning of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah is. When Dhuhr comes in, then he needs to know the prayer. When Ramadan comes, he needs to know how to fast. And then there's also the ayn on different individuals. And we gave the example that the rules of surgery are not my response. I don't need to know what the hukm different types of surgery is. Whereas Dr. Abdullah, so sometimes Sayyid Abdullah, sometimes Dr. Sayyid Abdullah. So Dr. Sayyid Abdullah, Hafidhullah, Allah zidahu khair fi dunya wa fil akhirah, he needs to know the rules related to surgery. And it's interesting, if I can just be sidetracked, one of the rules that we discussed, again, shows the process of fiqh. Yesterday we gave the example of how his wife Ustaza asked the question about somebody who just became Muslim in Aberdeen when the fast was 18 hours long. We discussed that and how that answer was given. Likewise, we had a discussion about brain surgery at one point when he was about to do a particularly difficult brain surgery, which would have lasted for, I think, was something like 15 hours. And how was he going to time 15 hours prayer? And the only way he could do it would be he prayed Dhuhr and Asr at one time, Maghrib and Isha at a different time. And between the two, he plans that the whole surgery is worked out because he has several teams. I think there were 2 teams who were being required. But they knew that the surgery starts at 1:17. 1:17, not 1:20, not 1:10, 1:17, because it's about his prayer. And he needs to pray Dhuhr and Asr and then go straight into the surgery. And everybody needs to be in their scrubs ready for action when he walks through the door. But this is because he's doing jam, taqdeem. And the question then becomes from the fuqaha, is this permitted to do jam taqdeem? And there's a whole series of questions. So this is how fardu ayn, because this is not something that anybody else needs to apply except a brain surgeon who's doing a 15-hour brain surgery in Aberdeen, because the times are so strange in the north. So here what becomes ayn is ayn, meaning on that individual. So fardu ayn has different meanings in different situations. And what he did generally was about what everybody needs to know. And then Imam al-Haddad, and also he touches on this, is that the rules that apply to you are that which you need to fulfill your relationship with your Lord. And so if you're a taxi driver, there are things which will disobey, which will be considered disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your role as a Uber driver or a taxi driver, which I don't need to know about because I don't drive a taxi. But that person knows, so it's related to their relationship with their Lord. Whereas fardu kifaya is somebody needs to know it. Somebody needs to know the rules of certain matters. Not somebody in this community, somebody has to know the rules of divorce. Not every single person needs to know the rules of divorce, but if nobody knows the rules of divorce, you have no source to go back to when a divorce is needed. Is this divorce valid? Is this divorce not valid? This is something which we require the ulama, some people, to know. And I'll give you an example. If somebody types, I divorce you, 100 times, is this a valid divorce? And does it count as one or does it count as three? These are questions which, alhamdulillah, I can pass on to somebody else. Why? Because I know fardu kifaya is his responsibility, it ain't my responsibility. Okay? If I'm in a place where there is nobody, then somebody needs to be able to answer that question. And this is a real case. Fortunately, we have phones. So this kifaya can still be fulfilled by giving somebody's telephone number in Malaysia, much to their annoyance. But they're qualified as a mufti, so people give my telephone number out, and I'm not a mufti. So he put the answer to this question, just for interest's sake, is it valid or not? Don't say, did he cut and paste? Which is a relevant question, because he didn't cut and paste. He actually typed it each time because there were spelling mistakes. He later said he didn't mean it. He was so angry, he became crazy. And the mufti said, but you weren't so crazy that you couldn't type out the words, because your fine motor skills were fine. You typed most of them correct. So therefore you were sane. And you can't claim that it's not valid. The question only is it counted as one or is it counted as three? Because it was typed and not spoken. And a written divorce, even if it's written down 3 times, still only counts as one, according to the Shafi madhab. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so that's something of the fardu ayn and fardu kifaya. Fardu ayn and fardu kifaya. Before we go any further, I'm going to give you a couple of questions to think about. There's a case. A man, he travels a lot, and alhamdulillah, people become Muslim. On one occasion, he's traveling through Zanzibar. Zanzibar's in East Africa, and outside Mesquite Goful, which is a famous mosque, which used to be famous for its knowledge. And alhamdulillah, he goes to this mosque to visit. Outside, there's a Rasta, dreadlocks down to here, and he sees this Rasta and he greets him, and he recognizes that he's not an African, or most Rastas are not, and he's not even a proper Jamaican. He's probably from Birmingham. And so he starts talking to him, but he starts quoting Bob Marley. And this Rasta sits up and starts listening to these quotes from Bob Marley. The next day, Maghrib time, the Rasta is standing outside of the mosque waiting for, and then they talk about Bob Marley. And then the third day, he comes and they talk about, quote Bob Marley, and then they talk about how it relates to Revelations 10, which is a verse of the Bible, and what the concept of what Revelations is about, what revelation is, and he becomes Muslim. And the people around say, how do you know everything? And the person answers, he says, I don't know everything, I know a load of rubbish. But the rubbish that I know comes in handy. The same person once was talking about a rock musician to Khalid Ajmain, if anybody knows him. And they talked about this, and then the guy Khalid gets into a taxi, a Grab, and the taxi driver is playing the very same musician. And then he turns to him and says, did you know when he died? It's like, because what was said about this particular singer, Ronnie James Dio, he died of cancer. And so he starts talking about, he says, how do you know all of this? He says, my sheikh told me. He says, what do you mean a sheikh that knows about Ronnie James? They start talking about music. He takes his telephone number, and guess what happens? So here, the same person who has this encyclopedic knowledge of rubbish has been the means by which people become Muslim. Now, the lesson there is Is there any benefit? Because we use the word Mahmud and Mathmoom. Can any of this rubbish be considered Mahmud? Or is it all Mathmoom? And how do we define what is Mathmoom, what is blameworthy, and what is praiseworthy? And this is an important question that each one of us will be asking, because most of us have a whole load of rubbish just clogged in our brains. Why? Because we live in a world now which is different to the way it used to be. You know, the times when I studied in North Africa, in a place which had, there was no telephones, there was no internet, there was no, you know, you didn't get any influences except that which was natural. You heard people talking. You people heard talking about politics. Politics was a big thing. But that's all. You're not bombarded with completely useless information about the granddaughter of the former president's uncle, who happens to have a new range of perfumes, which is named after a cat that grew up in Missouri, in the same town. And people have all of this bombardment of information. And it's just relentless. So how do we decide to get rid of all of that noise without it coming into your head? And what of that stuff that comes in your head is valid? And this is what we need to be able to decipher in our own situations. And then we also have a question which, alhamdulillah, although I tease Dr. Sayyid, Professor Dr. Al-Imam Abdullah bin Muhammad al-Haddad, but he is an expert in his field. He's at a level of his field where people who are brain surgeons, I can just drop the name Abdullah al-Haddad, and they say, oh, you know Abdullah al-Haddad, yeah. And they have must become Muslim yet, but I imagine that one day it will happen. You know, I'll just be in a mosque or on one of these open days where I'm offering coffee to non-Muslims, and a brain surgeon walks in and he takes shahada just because of the level of knowledge that he's reached. And alhamdulillah, the example I gave of the person, I give this example, there was somewhere else, we're doing an operation, they're playing music. This is something which practicality that actually happened, and everybody in Scotland heard about it. So here, at what level does a surgeon need to get? What are the aspirations? How far in terms of knowledge does one go? The reason why I'm thinking of this is because I have a friend of mine who's in surgical training, who is also a genius and has the same spiritual inclination. But his boss is basically saying you're never going to make it because you're not committed enough to the knowledge and to the practice of surgery. You're a genius, but being a genius isn't enough to being a brilliant surgeon. You need to go higher and higher and higher. And this is what we would call farad kifaya. But how high does farad kifaya go? How far do you need to know? And alhamdulillah, brain surgery is brain surgery. If I were to change the topic and talk about genetics, for example, is there a point at which it is limited? And then in particular about the cloning, which is an element of medical theory which has become practice. How far do we need to go if this is farad kifaya? Because this is a practical question. Right. And then another point.
You continue as
Yeah. So another question is how, for example, in the practice of medical practice, does the two link? And I'll give you an example in Scotland. Scotland, Wales, and England have different policies on organ donation. And slightly different policies, or this guidance. Policy is roughly the same, but the guidance is different in England, Scotland, and Wales. The reason why is because the person who was advising on organ donation in England was a mufti. traditionally trained mufti. He held a position on organ donation, which was different to the advisor in Scotland, because that person happened to be a school teacher, but at the same time had a strong interest in organ donation, plus had the ability to research with using Arabic sources. Plus, some people called him a sheikh. Because some people called him a sheikh, occasionally he would use that name, yeah, I'm a sheikh. And in this occasion, the government approached, and he wrote policy which differed slightly. Which one has the greatest validity? The Scottish or the English? Because the English was written by a mufti, and the Scottish was written by a school teacher. Sorry? The English. Okay. I take offense. I take offense with that as policy right to the Scottish government. I think our policy was better. But that's a personal opinion. My personal opinion is different because the Scottish, just to make clear, is that the question is about when is the human body, when is the human being dead? And the Mufti said the person is dead when the heart has stopped completely. And the Scottish policy is there are two definitions of death. One is when the brain has died, and the other, brain cell death, and the other is when the heart dies. And the advice that should be given to those people who have a religious background is that there are two levels of death, and if you prefer, we will not take the organs until the heart has stopped beating. However, this will mean that the quality of the organs will be lower, and as a result, it might be that the operation will be less successful, or there is a greater risk to the person, and it will be your decision whether you want to have a point of brain death or heart death. And this is the Scottish policy, whereas the English policy is, if you don't accept brain death, then we won't take your organs. Because we can't go through the process of asking every individual which definition of death you prefer. Whereas in Scotland, if you're a Muslim, the Muslims will be asked, do you want to donate? And if they say, yeah, just don't take the organs. And if they say, no, we don't want to because we're not sure about death, then the policy will explain. So that's why. But I'm only joking. But
I changed my mind. I just changed my mind.
But here again, this is important about what levels. And within the chapter that we're going to read now, some of these things are touched on. But I wanted to put it in the context before we started. So, this is an explanation of that which is فرض كفاية. اعلم, know أن الفرض لا يتميز عن غيره إلا بذكر أقسام العلوم. But that which is compulsory is only differentiated by falling into different categories. The way that we differentiate types of knowledge is by their categorization. What is this category? العلوم بالإضافة إلى الفرد الذي نحن بصدده تنقسم إلى شرعية وغير شرعية. So that which is فرد is that which is شرعية and غير شرعية. And what's meant by here is that which is to do with the legal code of Islam, and that which is not directly connected to the legal code of Islam. Or Shari'iyah is that which is on the path. Shara'a is that path. وعنيا بالشريعة, what we mean by the word Sharia, ما يستفاد من الأنبياء صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. But what we mean by Shari'iyah in this sense is that which comes from the prophets. So prophetic knowledge. لا يرشد الآخر إليه مثل الحساب. Not that which is related to the intellect. The source of the knowledge is prophetic, whereas the source of non-Shari'iyah could be from the intellect. For example, mathematics. Mathematics is a science or an ilm which has been developed by the development of the brain. It's by thinking. ولا تجد بالطب
And then they differ in this categorization. But he said, nor is it understood by experience, as is the case with knowledge, with medicine. So his medicine, his understanding is that medicine is by experience. And anyway, we won't go into too much detail. ولا السماع مثل اللغة, and not by listening. For example, languages. So alhamdulillah. فالعلوم التي ليست شرعية, so we have شرعية and غير شرعية. That which is from the Sharia comes from prophetic knowledge, and that which is غير شرعية can come from al-aql, knowledge, al-aql, intellect, tajriba, experience, or sama, hearing about it. فالعلوم ليست شيء شرعية, تنقسم إلى ما هو محمود وإلى ما هو مذموم. And that which is غير شرعية is that which is comes from, which is praiseworthy and blameworthy. وإلى ما هو مباح, and that which is and of course there is that which is neither this way or that way, is neither praiseworthy nor blameworthy. But Mahmud, what is praiseworthy? ما ترتبط به مصالح الدنيا. That which is praiseworthy is that which leads to benefits in this worldly business. So this world that we live in. So going back to the kinds of knowledge that's coming our way all the time, there are things which are useful. There are things which are useful. For example, people look up cheats for everything. Somebody said, "Oh, you've got a sword, you've got a twisted knee. I'll get a YouTube video for that." This is something that happened last week. Somebody says, "Would you like a massage? Is there any pain?" I says, "Actually, I've got a slight problem with my knee." Now I know what's the problem with my knee. But it was interesting. The response was, "Oh, I'll get you there's a YouTube video about this." Well, actually, the answer is I just need to lose a bit of weight and exercise more, because I've had the same problem since I was 16, and I know that when I start to put on a bit of weight, or I start to my exercise drops, then the pain comes because the strain is on the tendons. Whereas when the strain is on the muscles are strong, I don't get the strain on the tendons, whereas the muscle, it's not rocket science. But the answer was, there's a cheat for that. Now, there are things which are good on the internet. Baked potatoes. You know how to make perfect baked potatoes. There is a cheat. There's a website and there's a YouTube channel which is specially designed for health-based. And then there was a time where all of my cooking was based on from the internet. Even things that I could cook. The reason why was because my ex-wife had diabetes, gestational diabetes, when she became pregnant. She had diabetes developed, and so therefore everything had to be ready for a diabetic diet. And I've never cooked for diabetic, so now all of a sudden there's changes in everything that I do. But going to the internet actually benefited, and it was very useful because after the baby was born, it was no longer necessary, but it was useful. So here, when it says I can say that actually I can recommend a certain YouTube channel for cooking, especially no longer have a wife, you have an ex-wife, and you have to cook for yourself. You forget what it's like to cook. So the definition of that which is beneficial, mahmud, is that which brings about benefits in a worldly sense. And of course, knowing about some film stars' new perfume doesn't really have much sense unless you, yeah, helps. So this is one of the definitions, how you, الطب والحساب وذلك ينقسم, so things like mathematics, medicine, ينقسم with these, this is how, there is also developed, is also further subcategorized إلى ما هو فرض كفاية وإلى ما هو فضيلة, and that which is فرض كفاية, that which is فضيلة. وليس بفريضة. And this is now going back into that question about how far you take this knowledge. So when we're talking about brain surgery, my ignorant opinion of somebody who has no knowledge is that I don't think there'll be a limit in how skillful or how much knowledge we can have about the practice of brain surgery. Because I can't see there can be any harm in this. However, I do see some harm in going into the expertise of the cloning. And this is just my personal gut feeling, but it's also the gut feeling of several scholars who specialize in medical ethics. But it's not my problem. This is fardu kifaya. It's not my problem. It's somebody else's problem. وأما فرض كفاية فهو كل علم لا يستغنى عنه في قوام أمور الدنيا. That which is فرض كفاية is that which we actually need to function. So the knowledge of brain surgery on a general level is compulsory, because we do need, people are going to have brain injuries, and therefore we do need access to people who can do. But there might be other forms of surgery which take a priority over this for a society to function. And that's now a question about how society functions with its knowledge base. Going to Tim, also it's limited, specific to the society. There was probably there was a doctor, an Egyptian doctor who lived in Riyadh, in Lamu, next to my house. And I'm sure he was a great doctor. However, whatever you went to him for, you got prescribed one of two medicines, either paracetamol or cough mixture. And so sometimes he'd actually give you the choice. What would you like for malaria? Would you like a cough mixture, or would you like paracetamol? I had paracetamol, so I asked for cough mixture. So he said, did you bring a bottle? And I said, no. He says, we can have paracetamol instead. Because if you want cough mixture, it's a big tub. So here, it doesn't really matter whether he was a brain surgeon or not. If I had a brain injury, there's nothing he could do about it except give me paracetamol or cough mixture. So here, the society, the needs of what for society to function. However, in that society, alhamdulillah, it's advanced. They now have other medicines, and some of them are quite good. You have a wider choice. So you go and you say, what would you like? And you can say, actually, I'd like antibiotics, because it's good for malaria, particular antibiotic. Khalas. But if there's a baby born, you can call Auntie Rabia. Auntie Rabia. If there's a problem with the baby, call Auntie Rabia. There's no need for a doctor. Auntie Rabia is there. Why? She's been delivering babies for 30 years. Okay? She's also a nurse. So if you do happen to have a brain injury, she's the closest you're going to get to a brain surgeon. But she's got enough knowledge to know that you need a brain surgeon. And the nearest brain surgeon is 450 miles away. But at least, so here the amount of knowledge will actually depend on how the society functions. But then what becomes fardu kifaya becomes, what does the society actually need? And what it does need are doctors who can triage, not doctors, nurses who can triage really well. Plus, we need facilities to be able to get people to the doctors, because to get doctors there is not realistic. However, to get a doctor there once a week is not inconceivable, but it's costly. So now when people say we've got money to give you, actually my decision about where I will put charity money, part of it will be based on actually what knowledge do we need. And one of the things that I'm looking to do is when people offer me money, instead of building mosques, which I think is a waste of time, is to try and find how can I get a doctor to the island once a week who can do basic treatments, not brain surgery, plus sufficient funds to get people to the brain surgeon. So here now our societies function around knowledge and need. And the knowledge and need should function around what the needs of the society is. Now, if one of them decides he wants to become a brain surgeon, I wouldn't invest in his education. Well, I will, but not because it's good for the community, because I know if he trains as a brain surgeon, he's going to move to England. And that would be a waste of money. I'd rather put the investment in somebody who can make money. Good business manager. So that we can generate more. So these decisions about knowledge are based on what does the society need. So going back to the statement, وأما فرض كفاية فهو كل علم لا يستغنى عنه في قوام أمور الدنيا كالطب. So tib is medicine. Every society has to have skills in tib. إذ هو ضروري في حاجة بقاء الأبدان كالحساب وكالحساب. So we need it to stay alive. كالحساب. But likewise we need حساب فإنه ضروري في معاملات وقسمة الوصايا والمواريث وغيرها. We need maths to be able for society to function. And going back to my own teaching, my curriculum, so to speak, I worked with gypsy children for a short while. So these children are children, they just don't stay still. So they'll be in your school for a few weeks, few months. And I realized that some of them are absolute geniuses when it comes to mathematics. If you ask them, what is the price of lead? So if I came to you with a lead pipe weighing 800 grams, how much could I sell it for? They would be able to calculate what's 800 grams of lead worth, and they'll give you a price of what. Okay, what if I was to give you 800 grams of lead and 2 kilos of wrought iron, which I've stolen from the local church? And they'll say, well, and they'll work. If you ask them to do any like other kind of mathematics, they'd struggle. Why? Because the knowledge that they have is that which is useful to their community, which is fine. You can teach everything around the cost of metals. And likewise, I remember teaching a whole series of the whole maths curriculum around Premier League table. So again, what do you need in mathematics for the society to function? But mathematics, numbers, at a basic level, everybody needs to know, and then at some level, more specialist people require that ability to know. والمواريث وهذا هي العلوم التي لو خلا البلد عمن يقوم بها حرج أهل البلد. Because if you're without this knowledge, then the society will have difficulties. فإذا قام بها واحد كفى وسقط الفرض عن الآخرين. But as long as somebody can do it, as long as somebody can calculate, it's all right. فلا يتعجب من قولنا إن الطب والحساب من فروض الكفاية. So don't find it strange that I say mathematics and medicine is a فرض الكفاية. فإن أصول الصناعة أيضا من فروض الكفاية. And if that's not strange, then likewise engineering is. Engineering in the general building in the صناعة, manufacture. كالفلاحة والكحاكة وحياكة والسياسة بل الحجامة فإنه لو خلع البلد عن الحجاب. This is interesting. Again, it's to do with society. So if there is no society that doesn't have a hijab, somebody who can do hijab, then obviously the society can't function. I'm not sure that's true of Liverpool. I think we do all right with the hijab, or do we? What do you think? I've moved from Scotland now to England. So I don't think, certainly not in Chesterfield. Chesterfield's a tiny little town. There is no, Cupping. So there's no hijab. In his thinking, how can you have a place with no hijab? For me, my thinking is, how can you have a place which doesn't have real good quality coffee? How can you have a city which doesn't have, it's part of this city can't exist, it can't function without good quality coffee, because if not, what will happen? Everyone will drink Starbucks. And the whole city will be cursed. So the only way we can protect the city is by making sure somebody learns how to roast good coffee beans and knows the difference between Guatemalan coffee and Puerto Rican coffee. For me, this is my thinking. You're probably looking and thinking, no, I prefer Ghazali. And you're entitled to that, because this is about how societies function. Tell you. And he says this, and I actually believe, I'm only teasing, but I think we do need a hijab, because once the traditional sciences of medicine are lost, then we rely on people who work for drug companies. And unfortunately, there are doctors who may know a great deal, but they can only prescribe according to what they're told. And what they're told is they're told by people who make money out of telling them what to do. So they may be great doctors, but unfortunately, the society is not functioning. So we do need alternatives. And I agree that we do need hijab. We also need those people who are alternatives within medicine. Because if they don't have hijab, then just as I think that the whole city would be destroyed if they don't have coffee, he says actually the community will be destroyed if they don't have hijab. He's probably right and I'm probably wrong. وخارج بتعريضهم وأنفسهم للهلاك فإن للذي أنزل الداء أنزل الدواء وأشتريه استعماله وعد الأسباب لتعاطيه فلا يجوز التعرض للهلاك بإهماله. Allah sent down the cure as he sent down the illness, and so it becomes haram for the community to put it into to lead to destruction. You can't destroy your own community, because it is compulsory for people to know how to preserve the community. And he understands that this is through hijab, and I perhaps understand through good quality coffee. Allah is best. وأما ما يعد الفضيلة فلا فريضة وتأمق في دقائق الحساب وحقائق التين. And this is where we come to this question. But what is fadila? Fadila is that which is extra, in the sense extra. Not what is extra for society is to go into the details of mathematics. We need people whose level of genius in mathematics is much higher than the average person. And there's some benefits in this. Is that when you go to a community and you find that there's a genius in the community, it lifts the whole community, because there's an aspiration about what you can achieve. And when you know there's a poet, for example, in a particular village or a particular town, you know poetry, language generally is raised by the highest aspiration. And likewise, I'm boasting and showing off that I know a great brain surgeon, but at the same time, it also gives us a pride. And it's actually nice when people say, do you know, brain, yeah, I know, genius. His name is Abdullah al-Haddad, Sayyid Abdullah al-Haddad, radiallahu anhu. And here it gives pride in the simple name al-Haddad. So here it has many benefits, but this is not even fardu kifaya. This is fadila. This is something that we can benefit by. It's extra. So here knowledge can be fadila. ولكنه يفيد بزيادة قوة إلى في قدر محتاج في قدر محتاج إليه. وأما المذموم منه فعلم السحر والتلمسات وعلم الشعبذة والتلبيسات. And then that which knowledge is madhmuma, these are quite clear to him. It's things like magic and talisman and these sort of things. These are things which are blameworthy knowledges which are from the Sharia. Actually, there's people that differ. They say it's fard kifaya to know about these things. And I struggled with this previously because I kind of leaned towards what Razal is saying, it's madhmuma, and how could it be fard kifaya? But then I realized that actually there's a load of stuff going on out in the world to do with mental health, to do with people's trauma, to do with people's lives, how different things affect their functioning society. Just I went on one of these trips recently, because somehow I've become a tour guide. And on the tour guide, they say, people phone up and say, I'd like to go to Mecca, but I don't know whether I'm healthy enough. I've been suffering from mental illness, and I'm not sure whether going to Mecca is going to make it worse. He says, wow, you should just come with our group. We've got Syeikh Abdul Aziz. He's an expert, and he's got loads of time, and he's got, he's always there, he never turns anybody away. You just come on our group. So I turn up on the screen, like for 5 minutes, I see the level of craziness, which is higher than the normal craziness I attract. And then they got fairly serious mental illness. And then, so these are two that I know are they've got serious mental health issues. And then a third one I didn't know had mental health issues until she decided, because she's in Makkah, she doesn't need the medicine anymore because of the barakah of the city. And then only did I realize that she's got serious mental health issues. And when she comes to me and says, I'm really sorry for the way I've been behaving lately, but it's because I'm dizzy all the time and I'm a bit confused because I haven't been taking my medicine. And I was thinking, yeah, that explains a lot. I said, I didn't want to say what condition do you have? I just says, what medicine you take? Whoa, that's heavy psychotic medicine. I said, you better take it. No, but I said, take it. No, but shit, take it. I'm Sheikh. Okay, so here, and then there's so the 3 people that we know have mental illness, alhamdulillah, kind of being dealt with. But then I have 5 other people who have sihr, and they come to me because apparently I'm a sheikh. So they come and say, Sheikh, I was diagnosed with black magic. Oh, please, at least I can deal with depression. You come and tell me you've got ADHD or you've got depression, any of these difficulties that people have in their life. I know some of this stuff, or at least I'm used to it. Oh, come and tell me you've been diagnosed with jinn. I've been diagnosed. I says, who diagnosed you? Oh, his name is Sheikh Abdul. He's very famous. Thinking, yes, famous for messing up people's lives. But how do I deal with this? And then somebody else comes. She's not been diagnosed with jinn, but the other lady told her she's got a jinn because it's the same jinn that she's got. It's like it must be a cousin of that jinn. And then somebody else comes thinking, I've got a group of 50 people. I've got 10 of them possessed by jinn, and 3 of them were going to the hell. I need a holiday. But the reason why there's a difference between tip and sihr, because some of these people say magic has been done on them. Now, how can I turn around? Actually, the person that's suffering from depression, I'm less worried about her than I am about you, because she knows she's depressed. She knows the triggers for her depression. She knows she knows the depressive symptoms, and she knows in the end, if she really needs medication, there are routes for medication, but she's not taking it because she's dealing with it. She's actually in not a bad position. I can deal with it. I'm used to that. But you come along and tell me, somebody did black magic on me, and it's my second cousin's cat was the influencer in this case, because this black cat passed around. It's always a black cat, And the answer to this is I need to slaughter a black goat. And this happens, so please, can you slaughter a black goat? What? Of course I can slaughter a black goat. I can slaughter any colour goat. Why? It's because there was a black cat that passed my mother's bed when she was ill dying of cancer. Now she's died. It's because of the cat. And the only way she's going to go to Jannah is because somebody slaughters a black goat in Africa because this cat passed her in northwest London. I haven't got a clue what's going on here. But there are people that know stuff like this. And I met one of them, Aslan Sheikh, and he specialized in magic. And I remember him dealing with this stuff. I was like, whoa, this is what they teach you in Al-Azhar. If they teach you this stuff, this is really good. Because he was able to deal with things like this. Now somebody ought to deal with this. And if you ever know anybody, I can at least give them a telephone number. Next time I'm on Umrah, just please, I had to screen everybody with the mental health screening test before they come on my group. But going back to the question, actually, some people say it's necessary to learn about stuff like this. And it's necessary to learn about every critical issue that society has. So we need somebody who can speak about LGBT issues from a really deep perspective in terms of fiqh, in terms of history, in terms of politics of the time. This is required, because if we fail in delivering this message, we as a community will fall behind. We will have difficulty. So going back to the principle, how do we know what is Fard Kifaya? That which puts the society right. So actually, some societies need specialists in magic. And I wish I knew somebody, because I can't send anybody anywhere. This is a real problem, because I just listen and say, sorry, I don't know. I can't help you. And that's not really sufficient unless we have somebody around. Like, for example, Habib Khalim's in the city. When he's touring the UK, I don't know if he has any specialist in this. I just say, I'll speak to somebody who knows Habib Khalim. They never get to Habib Khalim anyway. But at least I've done my duty to at least point them in the right direction. So this is how we know al-madlub minhu. وأما المباح, we can stop here. فالعلم بالأشعار التي لا سحف فيها وتواريخ الأخبار ما يجري مجراه. And this is that which is mubah, is those things which don't really benefit the society, but there might be some goodness in it, like poetry and things like history, like I have lots of useless information in my head. I knew where three of James the First's Queen Elizabeth I. She a lot of her husbands, history. She had a tendency for husbands to die around her, and several of them, Lord Darnley, died not far from where I lived, and then another one died Bothwell. So two of her ex-husbands died, interestingly, not far from Glasgow. So I often, when people want to know where I live, I take them up to the park. We go to Crookston Castle and say, oh, by the way, Lord Darnley died mysteriously just in that corner over there. And it's entertaining. People then get entertained, and they actually like the castle because of this useless information I have. And this is very useless information, which is actually mubah, because it has no real benefit, doesn't help the society, it doesn't harm the society. Whereas, so this is how knowledge is understood and divided, inshallah. We ask Allah to give us only that benefit, knowledge which is beneficial. Teach us that which benefits us. Make us benefit by what we've learned, and may this be a benefit to others. Inshallah. So are there any questions, preferably not about Lord Darnley, Ronnie James Dio, or Bob Marley?
You can pose the questions, inshallah, after this brief consideration.
Inshallah.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله بشير فؤادك بالنصيب الوافي بشر فؤادك بالنصيب الوافي من قرب ربك واسع العطاف، من قرب ربك واسع العطاف. الواحد الملك العظيم فلذ به، الواحد الملك العظيم فلذ به، واشرب من توحيد كأسا صافي، واشرب من التوحيد كأسا صافي. واشهد جمالا أشرقت أنواره، واشهد جمالا أشرقت أنواره، في كل شيء ظاهرا لا خافي، في كل شيء ظاهرا لا خافي. وعلى مناص الجمع كف متخليان، وعلى مناص الجمع كف متخليا، عن كل فان لتفرق نافي، عن كل فان لتفرق نافي. والباث لرب العرش في أقداره، والباث لرب العرش في الأقداره، ثوبا من التسليم وفي الضافي، ثوبا من التسليم وفي الضافي. واستغفر ربك كل حما إنه، واستغفر ربك كل حم إنه، سبحانه البر اللطيف الكافي، سبحانه البر اللطيف الكافي. واسأله أن يلبسك ثوب إنابة، واسأله أن يلبسك ثوب إنابة، وحداية وسلامة وعوافي، وحداية وسلامة وعوافي. واشكر على نعماه واصبر للبلاء، واشكر على نعماه واصبر للبلاء، وتحل بالإفضال والإنصاف، وتحل بالإفضال والإنصاف. وعليك بالإخلاص والصدق والبال، وعليك بالإخلاص والصدق والزهد وجانب تكرر الأوصاف، الزهد والجانب منكر أوصاف. وأنيب إلى دار الكرامة والبقاء، وأنيب إلى دار الكرامة والبقاء، وأن الدنية كن أخي متجافي، وأن الدنية كن أخي متجافي. والزام كتاب الله واتبع سنتان، والزام كتاب الله واتبع سنتان، وقد حداك الله بالأسلاف، وقد حداك الله بالأسلاف. أحلي اليقين لعينه ولحقه، أحلي اليقين لعينه ولحقه، وصلوا وثم جواهر الأصداف، وصلوا وثم جواهر الأصداف. راحوا اليقين أعز مشروب، وراحوا اليقين أعز مشروب لنا، راحوا اليقين أعز مثروب لنا، فاشرب وطب واسكر بخير سلافي، فاشرب وطب واسكر بخير سلافي. هذا شراب القوم ساداتنا، وقد هذا شراب القوم سادتنا وقد أخطى طريقة من يقول بخلافي أخطى طريقة من يقول بخلافي بشير فؤادك بالنصيب الوافي بشير فؤادك بالنصيب الوافي من قرب ربك واسع العطاف من قرب ربك واسع العطاف
اللهم
وسلم وسلم. You get a bit of a lesson from the Qasida.
Related to the lesson is that you can, it's not this fard of ayn to know sufficient Arabic for us to pray. It's not fard of ayn, but to understand the level of poetry that has been read. But it's a kifaya in our community, maybe not a fard kifaya, to some of us or somebody to be able to understand what was being read. Because in this is so much of knowledge. But likewise, going back to what society needs, society also needs people who read it well. And there are many of Qasidas of Imam Haddad which are read in a way which are very upbeat. And I remember one of my teachers saying, "This is tarab. This is not how. This is pop music." And alhamdulillah, the way that Sayyid Abdullah read this is the way that the Salaf used to read. This is handed down, and it may not be pop music, but it goes straight to the heart. And one of the interesting things is that some of the qasidas of Imam Ahmed are read in different ways at different times. And so, for example, Ya Rabbi Ya Alim al-Hal is read in the night time very slowly. Ya Rabbi Ya Alim al-Hal إليك وجهت لنا ومعنا بمكان ثم نوصل الباب. When on in the gathering, sometimes يا عالم سر منا لا تهديك ستر عنا يا ربي يا عالم. So this is something that begins بشير فؤادك, talking straight to your بشير فؤادك بقرب بشير فؤادك give you good news of the heart to your heart of a nasib, a portion which is worth it. So now it's going to talk to you about how do you bring your heart to life. And then at the end of it, it talks about drinking from hada sharab al-qawm saadatu. This is the drink of the people of our salaf. And the Arabs use the word sulaf and salaf. Sulaf means is a very mature wine. I don't know a great deal about wine, as opposed to useless information about everything else. But apparently 1971 was a good year for Chardonnay. So for the experts in wine, they will know that the more mature wine or the more mature whiskey is a greater. But actually, the beauty of this language is the word sulaf, salaf, or connected. So hada qawm sulaf. So ishrab min as-sulaf, drink from this particular wine, which is the wine of our salaf. So this is the beauty of the language here. Is difficult, is another level. So here there's the movement of people's hearts, and people might say, well, actually, why does, for example, I'm blessed that often I travel with Sheikh Afifuddin. I end up going to places where Sheikh Afifuddin might be, just in the hope I might see him. And I always bump into Sheikh Ridwan. And usually we end up sharing a room together because both of us are skinned and we need somewhere to stay. But it's often occasion. Why is Sheikh Ridwan so important? It's because he moves people's hearts. Not because he reads Quran. He does read Quran. He's a great Qari. But he's used to do irshad. And this role of the munshid has become something quite important. Unfortunately, It's also a way to get a career on YouTube. Huh? So if you can do drumming, and you put the right kind of YouTube channel up, you can become an influencer by learning how to play drums. Again, this is how the world has changed from moving people's hearts, where the munching is about moving somebody's heart, to somebody who can. So, Jazakumullah khair, and this is read the way it should be read. Jazakumullah khair. The words, we need a whole dars. Inshallah.
Any questions? Any questions?
Probably one. Non-related, would be non-related to the kitab, will be okay?
Sure.
Actually, it comes, we have to go back to last Monday, where at first I heard you said a few things at Habib Ali's house. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So I think Habib Ali Zanabi did mention about hypocrites, the traits of hypocrites. And we were all worried about all the traits that has been mentioned. And Alhamdulillah, when you spoke about it, you calmed us down by actually saying, you know, being worried. I'm stand corrected, but you said that being worried about being hypocrite is already part of the efforts to be a non-hypocrite. So my question is actually a famous hadith whereby Rasulullah SAW said that one of the traits of the hypocrites is that you don't perform subuh prayers and Isha prayers in Jama'ah. So the question is, probably a simple one, maybe everyone has knowledge about this but me. And I always wanted to ask this question. If we do this prayer, subuh and Isha at our house with our family, does that count as, or is it count as Jama'ah and not regarded as what Rasulullah have regarded it to be? Yes, that's my question. Thank you.
In case people didn't fully hear that, the question was about this hadith, about the person, one of the signs of the hypocrite, or one of the traits of it, they find أثقل عليه. This is the exact word. It's heavy upon them to pray the subh and the Isha in Jama'ah. The wording is actually important if we get the exact Arabic wording. Because أثقل عليه, it becomes heavy upon them. And this doesn't mean that there's a trait. If you do this, you're a hypocrite. If you do this, you're not a hypocrite, which is some of the hadith are like that. One of the, which says, one of the traits, that when given the trust, he breaks it. So if you fall into this category, then clearly you have a trait of hypocrisy. Whereas the wording here is that the hypocrite finds it, it becomes heavy upon them. And the reason why those two prayers are heavy upon them is because in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, these were times of darkness. You couldn't go to the mosque because traditionally, according to the Shafis and the vast majority, the sunnah was that they prayed and you couldn't recognize who people were. Whereas the Ahnaf, they have a different opinion, and they say that actually the prayer should be done when you can recognize who it is. So they pray the subh prayer late, whereas the rest, based on two things. One is the sunnah, is that the major practice, that there's hadith which say we used to go to the mosque and nobody would know who's there. The reason why this is important, and another is that this hadith which says that Allah's pleasure is in the beginning of the time, and in the end of it is His forgiveness. And it implies that if you come at the beginning of the time, you make Him happy, pleased, but at the end of the time, you still get maghfirah, still forgiven, but pleasure and maghfirah, which is higher. His pleasure is higher, so praying at the beginning of the time is better. So going back to the question of what are the hypocrites, the reason they found it athqala alay is because there was no benefit. Because people wouldn't know you're there or not there. That's why it's heavier upon them. It's not because the prayer itself is heavier, it's because they couldn't be seen. And that goes back to the thing about being seen. So if it's going for the Dhuhr prayer, for example, is the time when people are seen, then this would be easier for people. Whereas the Fajr prayer, you're not seen by anybody, because most mosques in the UK, if you go for Fajr, there might be 3 people, there might be 4 people. For Maghrib, there'll be 100 people. Isha, there might be 100 people. So the athqal alayh is actually to do with being seen, not to do with prayer itself. So therefore, if you don't pray the Fajr in Jama'ah, this hadith doesn't apply in the same way, because it's about athqal alayh, it becomes heavy because you're not seen. So that's the understanding of the hadith. And then the question is, if you pray at home for Subh al-Isha, is it still considered Jama'ah? Any prayer that you pray at home is considered Jama'ah. Any prayer that you pray, if it's Jama'ah, then it's a Jama'ah. The Jama'ah actually means people praying together. And therefore, the effort you should make should always be when you're at home to pray together. And there's a wisdom in this. One is because of the reward, but actually we live in a society now where families are being destroyed, they're being undermined, and the bond of Salah is one of the few things that can really spiritually bring people together. And when that breaks, then actually the family is starting to fall to pieces. And in some ways, in Ramadan in the UK, I actually recommend people to pray Taraweeh at home, not go to the mosque. And I personally would always pray my Taraweeh, or not always, as often as I could, with my family. Because the prayer with the family is the most important thing you can do. And there's many hadith about praying at home, Sunnah in particular. I mean, it is the Sunnah that praying at home. The Farad is better in the mosque. But the Sunnah in particular is better to pray at home. And when you have a Sunnah, which is what the majority say the Tarawih is, this is a time where you can really, really build your family in a time when the Ramadan brings people together. Fasting together is good. Praying the Taraweeh, and therefore lightening the Taraweeh, is really something which makes it easy for the family. And I know the best times that I had in terms of my family life was in Ramadan. And what I used to do, and I know there's difference of opinion about 8 and 20. I don't mind taking the opinion of 8. And then people that pray 8, I don't have a problem. Praying 2 is fine. Tarawih, in my understanding, is any prayer that comes after Isha. So if you do 2, you do 4, you do 8, you do 20, you do 36, they're all fine. But what I used to do, I used to do 8 light rak'ah with the family. And then I used to do dua, then I'd go on my own and do remaining 12. But the family know they're only doing 8. My daughter, one of the things I not so much about my daughter, is she would say, yeah, but I want to go. So she would come and join me. But she didn't have to. Not that she had to do any of them. But there was this feeling that she wanted to do this extra few rak'ah. And I know that if I went to the mosque, they wouldn't do any. And she would be the one that misses out the most, because this is her time to connect. So therefore, praying at home has absolutely massive benefits. Massive benefits. And if you're further from the mosque, then if it's not that easy to go to the mosque, then actually praying in the home, you're making your home a mosque. And especially, I mean, less so. Well, actually, in Malaysia as well, because it's not like we have a mosque on every corner. It's not like Birmingham. It's you have mosques, but sometimes it's still difficult to walk. People, So I have the massive benefits of praying with family. So it's a long answer to it. Jazakumullah khair.
Any further questions? If there isn't any more questions, I think what we'll close this message, inshallah. We'll meet up again tomorrow at more or less at the same time, around about 6:30 for with the Latif, followed by the Dars by Syeikh Abdul Aziz. Just to let anyone know that tomorrow, if you're free, you can come and join us sitting together at the address in Bukit Jelutong. So inshallah, make the effort and also near to attend this gathering, this blessed gathering, inshallah. ربنا انفعنا بما علمتنا ربي علمنا الذي ينفعنا ربي فاكنا وفاك أهلنا وقرابات لنا في ديننا مع الأهل القدر أنثى وذكر ربي وفقنا ووفقهم لما ترتضي وفعلا تخلق الحلال الدائم وقنا إتياء ما نظر كل فكل شر ربنا واصلح لنا كل شيء واغفر بنظامك العليم وربنا اطلبنا كل الديون قبل أن تأتينا رسل من هو واغفر وصلاة الله تشاء المصطفى من حق تعالى والوفاء بكتابه في الناس شفاء وعلى آل سيدنا بشرى وعلى الصحب وصحب الغرى اللهم اهدنا بالهدى واجعلنا ممن يسافر رضاك ولا تولنا ولي اتباعك ولا تجعلنا مما خالف امرك واصاك حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل لا حول ولا قوه الا بالله العلي العظيم يا ربنا اعترفنا باننا اعترفنا واننا اشرفنا على لظى اشرفنا اتب علينا توبه تغفر لكل حوبه واستر لنا العورات وامن الروعه لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والاهل والاخوان وسائر الحلال وكل ذي محبه او جهه او سوء والمسلمين اجمع من ربي اسمع فضلا وجودا من نال باكتساب منا مصطفى رسول نهضى بكل سول مصطفى رسول نهضى بكل سول بالمصطفى رسول نهضى بكل سول صلى وسلم ربي على الحد الحب وآله وصحبه على لذة الحمد لله والبدء والثناء سبحان رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين في كل لحظة عبد على الآخر ورضانا سيدنا الناس وبلاد كلماته وعليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.